My name is Margaret Hale. I am 69, and this house is the last thing my husband and I built together. The porch boards hold his hammer marks. The kitchen window bears the faint scratch where he measured twice and still cut wrong, laughing at himself. When I wipe the counters at night, I still hear his whistle, feel the gentle weight of a hand that will never land again. We paid the mortgage the slow way: double shifts, clipped coupons, winters with one room heated and the rest shut tight. David was a boy then. He ate first when the bank finally stamped paid. My husband cried in the driveway with the envelope open and sunlight on the page. Ours, he said. Not rich, just safe. Time did what time does. Our son grew, hard-edged and hurried. He married Karen, clever with smiles and sharper with silences. They visited less. Every holiday felt like a meeting run on a clock I did not own. When my husband's heart faltered last fall, David asked about the estate before he asked about the pain. I told myself grief was a strange tide and let it pass. Grief did not pass. It settled. Nights stretched thin. I learned the weight of a bed with one side unslept. I made soup and could not taste it. I kept the house moving. Gutters cleared, hedge trimmed, the old furnace coaxed through January. Work is a rope. You hold it, or you drift. At church, condolences turned to counsel. You should think about moving in with family, people said, looking past me toward Karen's neat hair across the aisle. Mrs. Ellison squeezed my hands and whispered, "Be careful. Some doors look like shelter and open onto storage." I smiled because widows are expected to. I took the long way home along Maple Street, counting lit windows, telling myself that a lit window means someone chose to stay. At my porch, I paused, touched the post my husband sanded smooth, and felt a splinter raise like a warning. Nothing in this quiet house had changed, and yet, from the corner of the living room, I could swear I heard a new sound, light as a key turning in someone else's lock. The funeral was meant to honor my husband. Instead, it became a stage for betrayal. The church was heavy with lilies, hymns echoing low against the rafters. I sat in the front pew, hands clenched around a folded handkerchief. David stood beside the coffin, Karen at his elbow, her black dress crisp as if she were attending a board meeting. When the pastor finished his final prayer, David cleared his throat. His voice carried too easily, polished, rehearsed. "Family, friends, thank you for coming. Today isn't just about loss, it's about legacy. My father left behind more than memories. He left behind a home that now passes to us, his children. We will carry it forward." A ripple moved through the congregation. Heads turned toward me. My stomach dropped. Karen slipped her hand into David's arm and added, loud enough for every cousin and neighbor to hear, "Margaret deserves peace now. She doesn't need the burden of a house this size. It's time she rests." The words slammed against me harder than the sound of dirt on the coffin. In one breath, they stripped me of the man I loved and the home we built. I rose halfway, voice trembling but sharp. "That house is mine as much as his. We built it together." Karen's smile barely moved. "Of course you contributed, Margaret, but legally things are clear. You'll be comfortable. We'll take it from here." The whispers swelled, pity from some, approval from others, curiosity from all. I sat back down, every bone in my body stiff. My husband's coffin rested at the altar, and already my place in the world was being carved away. I pressed the handkerchief to my lips to stop them from shaking. Grief had just doubled itself. I had lost my husband, and now, before the dirt was even settled, I was being told I would lose my home too. And the look in Karen's eyes, cold, satisfied, promised this was only the beginning. 2 nights after the funeral, they came to dinner uninvited. I had set a simple table: soup, bread, and the roast my husband used to carve. The chair at the end of the table still stood empty. David sat there without asking. Karen poured herself wine from my cupboard as if she owned the house already. I tried to keep my voice steady. "You announced something at the church that wasn't yours to announce." David leaned back, folding his hands across his chest. "Mom, I only told the truth. Dad left instructions. The house is meant for us now." My spoon clattered against the bowl. "Your father and I paid for this place together. Every nail, every bill, every winter without heat in half the rooms. Don't stand here and call it yours." Karen smirked. We're not standing, Margaret. We're sitting in what will soon be our dining room. You'll be much happier without the stress of upkeep. A woman your age shouldn't be climbing ladders or mowing lawns. I felt heat rise in my face. I am not a burden, and I am not done living in my own home. David's jaw tightened. You're letting grief cloud your judgment. Dad wanted security for us. He trusted me to take charge. The words cracked something inside me. Security? You mean power. You couldn't wait for the ground to settle before laying claim. From the hallway a voice cleared, a cousin, Michael, who had dropped by to return a borrowed book. He froze at the sight of us, tension thick in the room. Karen looked right at him, then back at me, her smile sharp. Good, a witness. Let him hear you resisting what Dad wanted. Michael shifted uneasily. I just came for the book. But his eyes darted between us, unsettled. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping loud against the floor. If you want a fight, you'll get one. But you will not erase me from this house, not while I still breathe. The silence that followed was brittle. Karen sipped her wine as if nothing had happened. David stared at me like I was already gone, and I knew then, this wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a takeover. The following week the whispers began. At the grocery store, Mrs. Whitaker leaned over her cart and whispered, David said the paperwork is clear. He and Karen are just trying to do right by you. Her smile carried pity, not trust. At church coffee hour, I heard my name followed by hushed words. She can't keep that place alone. It's only natural the children take over. Their eyes slid away when I turned. I didn't have to guess where the rumors came from. David and Karen had started showing everyone a thick folder they carried like a trophy. Inside, they said, was my husband's will, his true wishes. At the next family gathering, they laid it on the table in front of cousins and aunts. David tapped the papers proudly. Dad signed this. The house belongs to Karen and me. It's time Mom moves on. My hands shook as I lifted the document. The signature looked like my husband's hand, but the date was weeks after his stroke when he could barely hold a pen. My voice cut through the chatter. This is a forgery. Karen laughed, sharp and loud. You're confused, Margaret. Stress makes memories slippery. Don't embarrass yourself in front of everyone. I looked to my sister-in-law, Ruth, once my closest ally. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Maybe it's for the best, she murmured. You've been through so much. The words stung worse than the false will, betrayal layered upon betrayal. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the dark window. 10 years of family dinners, Christmas mornings, and birthdays had been reduced to gossip and signatures I didn't recognize. For the first time since the funeral, I felt the walls closing in. The house I had fought for all my life was turning into a cage. And somewhere deep, I understood. They would not stop until I was out. It happened on a Sunday, in the fellowship hall after service. The congregation gathered for coffee and cake the way they always did, voices bouncing off the linoleum walls. I had just poured a cup when Karen's voice cut through the chatter like a bell. Everyone, she said, her arm looped through David's, we have an announcement. I froze, the paper cup trembling in my hand. David cleared his throat. We're moving forward with Dad's will. The house is officially ours now. Mom will be relocating soon to a facility where she can get the care she needs. Laughter, not cruel, just dismissive, like people chuckling at a foregone conclusion. Heads nodded, murmurs spread. I felt my knees weaken. I stepped forward. That is not true. I am not moving anywhere. This house is mine as much as his. Karen tilted her head, smile perfectly shaped. Margaret, no one wants to argue, but we all know you can't handle a property that size. It's better this way. Someone in the back whispered, she's too proud to admit it. Ruth, my sister-in-law, placed a hand on my arm. Let it go. They're only looking out for you. The humiliation burned hot across my face. My voice rose, brittle but sharp. Looking out for me. They are stealing from me right in front of you. Gasps. A few people shook their heads. One man muttered, poor woman's losing her grip. I looked around the room and saw nothing but pity and doubt. The same neighbors who once praised my strength now turned their eyes away, unwilling to take my side. And then Karen delivered the final cut. You've done enough, Margaret. It's time to let go. This house was never really yours. It was Dad's. You just lived there. The words hit like a slap. My husband's coffin had barely settled in the ground, and now I was reduced to a guest in my own home. I left my untouched coffee on the counter and walked out of the hall, every step heavy with shame. The spring air outside felt colder than winter. For the first time in my life, I questioned whether I still had a place in the family, in the house, even in the town. I had reached the bottom. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat at the edge of my bed, the silence of the house pressing down on me. Every corner of the room carried my husband's memory. His reading chair, the slippers still tucked beneath the dresser, the faint scent of his aftershave on the closet door. I opened that closet out of habit, but my eyes caught on a battered shoebox tucked high on the shelf. I dragged it down, dust coating my hands. Inside lay old tax returns, mortgage statements, and a stack of envelopes tied with twine. One envelope bore my name in his careful, wavering script. My breath caught. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal. "Margaret," the letter began, the ink uneven but his voice clear in every word. "If you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't let anyone tell you the house isn't yours. You carried half the weight of every brick, every bill, every sacrifice. This home belongs to you. Guard it." Tears blurred the page, but I read it twice, 3 times, until the words branded themselves into me. Beneath the letter was the real will, notarized, signed months before his stroke left his hand too weak to hold a pen. The lines were blunt, unmistakable. The house passed fully to me. I pressed the papers to my chest, my heart pounding with something fiercer than grief. For weeks I had bowed my head, swallowing humiliation, doubting my worth, but here, in my husband's hand, was proof, not only of ownership, but of trust. He knew this fight might come, and he left me the weapon to win it. In the quiet of that room, I felt something shift. The shame that had wrapped me tight began to unravel. My back straightened, my breath came easier. They thought I was weak, cornered, finished. But they were wrong. I whispered into the dark, voice steady for the first time since the funeral. They wanted me erased. I will not disappear. Not from this house, not from my own life. The battle was no longer about survival. It was about dignity, and I was ready to fight. The next morning I cleared the kitchen table, spread out my husband's letter, the genuine will, and a stack of documents I had guarded for decades. Mortgage receipts, tax bills with both our names, photographs of us repainting walls and planting shrubs. I made a list, each line a nail in the coffin of their lies. 1. Lock down the law. I called Mr. Walters, the attorney who had helped us draft the will years ago. His voice was steady, familiar. "Margaret, I remember your husband well. If you have the signed, notarized copy, their paper isn't worth the ink. Bring it in. We'll certify and file it." 2. Gather witnesses. Rumor had become their weapon. I needed truth-tellers. Mrs. Pick Carter next door had seen me climb ladders to clear gutters, shovel driveways, mend fences. Reverend Blake had counseled my husband and me together when we set our affairs straight. Ethan, my grandson, had heard Karen brag about the new house before the funeral dust had settled. Each of them carried a piece of my defense. 3. Take back the stage. They humiliated me in public. I would not win this war in whispers. The town gossiped in church halls and community suppers. That was where the truth would ring loudest. 4. Use their own pride. Karen thrived on spectacle. She was already planning a dinner to celebrate the new chapter. I would let her set the stage, and then I would turn it against her. I wrote these steps in bold strokes on a yellow pad, the words anchoring me. That afternoon, I called the community hall to inquire about renting the space. The clerk told me Karen had already booked it for the following Saturday. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Perfect. Ethan sat across from me, his fists tight. "Grandma, they'll try to twist everything. They always do." I slid the letter toward him. "Not this time. Your grandfather's words are stronger than their lies." For the first time since the funeral, I felt strength flow back into me. This wasn't just reaction, it was strategy. I would not wait to be erased. I would write the ending myself. Saturday loomed like a storm on the horizon. The community hall buzzed with preparations. Karen had plastered invitations across town, boasting about the celebration of Dad's legacy. To them, it was a coronation. To me, it was a battlefield. I moved quietly, deliberately. First, I met with Mr. Walters in his office downtown. The old man ran his fingers across the embossed seal of the notarized will, nodding. This is ironclad, Margaret. The version they're waving around is a fraud. I'll be at that dinner if you want me. People need to hear the truth from someone who knows the law. Yes, I said, my voice firmer than it had been in weeks. I want you there. Next, I walked across the street to Mrs. Carter's porch. She poured coffee, listening as I told her everything. She leaned back, fire in her eyes. I've watched you keep that house alive. If they stand up and lie in front of me, I'll speak, loud enough for every gossip in this town to hear. Finally, I turned to Ethan. He was nervous, twisting his hands. Grandma, what if they get angry? What if no one believes us? I handed him his grandfather's letter. Sometimes the truth needs a voice. You'll know when it's time, but remember, you're not alone. During the week, I prepared evidence like a general packing weapons, photographs of me and my husband repainting the kitchen ceiling, receipts with both our names, the real will, sealed and notarized, the letter he wrote to me, folded and refolded until the creases were deep. I placed each piece into a leather folder, sliding it closed with care. On Friday evening, as I looked out the kitchen window, I saw Karen's car pull into my driveway. She stepped out with a bottle of wine, smiling like a victor, waving at neighbors as if she already owned the porch beneath her feet. I didn't answer the door. I didn't need to. Tomorrow would speak for me. The hall was booked. The crowd would gather. And when the moment came, I would strike. For the first time since my husband's death, I felt ready, not just to survive, but to reclaim what was mine. The community hall smelled of coffee and roast beef, the tables lined with casseroles and pies. Karen flitted about in a new dress, laughing too loudly, her hand on David's arm as if they were hosts of a grand gala. Their banner hung across the back wall, celebrating Dad's legacy. Not our father, not my husband, just theirs. I stood near the entrance, folder clutched tight. Ethan hovered at my side, pale but steady. One by one, relatives, neighbors, and church members arrived, filling the hall with chatter. I caught the way eyes flicked toward me, some sympathetic, others curious, most already convinced by the story David and Karen had spread. Dinner passed in a blur. Every toast was a dagger. To David and Karen for carrying on the family home. To the new generation. I kept my back straight, my hands still. Finally, Karen rose, her wine glass lifted high. Friends, tonight we celebrate not only my father-in-law's memory, but the new chapter ahead. David and I are honored to continue his legacy in the home he entrusted to us, and we promise to keep it alive. Applause, murmurs of agreement. My chest burned. I stepped forward before the noise faded, my heels echoing against the floor. That house was not entrusted to you. The room hushed, all eyes turned. I laid my folder on the podium and opened it slowly. You've heard their version. Now you'll hear the truth. I held up the notarized will, the seal gleaming under the fluorescent lights. This is my husband's final will, signed and witnessed months before his illness took his strength. It leaves the house in my name alone, not theirs. A ripple of gasps. Karen's smile froze. Mr. Walters stood from his seat near the back. I drafted this will myself. I notarized it. I recognize my own seal. What they have shown you is a forgery. The air shifted, murmurs turning sharp, doubt slicing through the room. Karen's laugh came brittle. You can't just wave papers around and expect us to believe. But before she could finish, Mrs. Carter rose, her voice ringing clear. I've lived across from Margaret for 30 years. I saw her and her husband keep that house alive brick by brick. If anyone doubts who deserves it, let them ask the neighbors who watched her fight every season. Applause burst from one corner. People leaned forward, whispering fiercely now, no longer in Karen's favor. And then Ethan stepped to the front, voice shaking but strong. Grandma raised me there. Every memory I have is with her in that house. Dad, Karen, you weren't there. She was. And I won't let you erase her. The hall fell silent. Karen's face drained of color. David's jaw worked, but no sound came. The truth was on the table now, undeniable, and for the first time, the crowd saw them for what they were. The silence after Ethan's words lasted only a heartbeat. Then David's voice cracked through it, loud and furious. "She's poisoned you, son. You've been brainwashed by her bitterness." He jabbed a finger at me. "You all think she's some noble widow, but she's nothing more than a tired old woman clinging to a house she can't manage." Gasps rippled. A few cousins looked away, ashamed, but others nodded uneasily. Doubt is contagious. Karen surged forward, eyes gleaming, her smile gone. "Do you people even know how reckless she is? Last winter, she nearly burned the place down, leaving the stove on. She's one accident away from killing herself. Or Ethan. That house isn't safe with her." "That's a lie," I shot back, my voice echoing. "The stove was faulty and I replaced it the same week. You twist every mishap into a weapon." Karen lifted her chin. "Or maybe you're forgetting things now, Margaret. Maybe you're not fit to live alone anymore." The room stirred. Words like forgetful, old, frail floated in the air. They were trying to bury me under stereotypes, turn my years into evidence against me. I gripped the folder tighter, my husband's letter inside pressing against my palm like a heartbeat. I am not frail, I am not forgetful, and I am not moving. David slammed his fist on the table. "This is our house now. Dad wanted security for us, not a shrine for you to waste away in." His voice cracked on the word our. He had overplayed. From the side, Michael, the cousin who had witnessed our earlier argument, stood slowly. "I've heard enough. I saw Dad and Karen mock her in her own kitchen weeks ago. They didn't come back for family. They came back for property." The crowd erupted into debate. Some defended me, others muttered doubts, but the tide was shifting. The ugliness of David's anger, Karen's venom, their obsession with ownership, it was all laid bare. Karen hissed to David, too loud to hide. "You promised me this house. Don't you dare let her take it back." And just like that, every ear in the hall caught the truth. The fight had reached its peak. The next blow would decide everything. The hall was a storm. Voices overlapped, chairs scraped, the smell of coffee and anger thick in the air. David raised his hands, shouting over the noise. "Enough! You all act like you know what's best, but you don't live with her. You don't see the bills piling up, the repairs she ignores. Dad trusted me to take charge because she can't, she never could." The words landed heavy. My chest clenched, but then I saw it. His slip, his mask cracking. I stepped forward. "Never could? I was the one beside your father for 40 years. I worked double shifts. I cooked from scraps. I signed every check right next to him. You were a boy in college when this house was paid off. Don't you dare say I never could." Murmurs shifted, less pity now, more agreement. Karen grabbed his arm, whispering sharp, but David shook her off. His face was red, voice raw. "We endured your stubbornness for decades. Dad said he'd leave the house to us just to keep you from ruining it after he was gone." Gasps tore through the crowd. He realized too late what he'd revealed. Contempt, not care, had driven him. Reverend Blake rose slowly from the back, his voice deep and steady. "I counseled your father myself. I was there when he signed the will. His words were clear. The house is Margaret's. What you've just confessed shows this was never about honoring him. It was about stripping her dignity." Applause broke, scattered at first, then louder, rolling across the hall like thunder. David's mouth opened, but nothing came. Karen's face twisted, panic flashing behind her eyes. And then Ethan stood beside me, taller than I remembered, his voice ringing strong. "Grandma is the only parent who never left me. You may be my blood, but she is my family, and I will stand with her." The applause grew, people rising to their feet. My hands shook, not from fear but from the sudden weight lifting, the tide turning at last. For weeks they had painted me weak, diminished, replaceable. Tonight their own words unmasked them. The power had shifted, the turning point had come. The hall fell into a charged silence. All eyes were on me. My hands no longer trembled as I stepped to the podium and opened the folder one last time. "This," I said, holding up the sealed will, "is my husband's true legacy. Not the lies, not the forgeries, not the rumors. He gave this house to me, his wife, his partner of 40 years, because he knew who stood beside him every step. Mr. Walters walked forward, his voice carrying weight. I notarized this will myself. It is binding, legal, and final. Any other document is fraudulent. He set the certified copy on the table in front of everyone. The official stamp gleamed under the light. Karen's voice cracked, shrill. She's lying. She's tricked all of you. But David cut her off with his own rage. Damn it, Karen, stop. We pushed too far. His words echoed through the hall. He realized too late he had confessed. The crowd erupted. Shouts, disgust, a cousin muttering, "Shameful." Reverend Blake raised his hand for quiet and said, "The truth is clear. Enough has been stolen from this woman." I pulled out the final page, my husband's letter, creased from the many times I had read it in the dark. My voice broke but held. He wrote this to me. "This home belongs to you. Guard it, and I will. For him, for me, for the years we built together." Ethan stepped beside me, his hand on my shoulder. "Grandma is the only one who never left. She is my family. This house is hers." The hall exploded in applause, loud and long, drowning Karen's protests. People rose to their feet, clapping, some even cheering. The sound washed over me like sunlight after endless winter. I looked at my son and his wife, their faces pale, their pride broken. "You tried to erase me," I said, my voice steady. "But you cannot erase truth. You cannot erase 40 years. You cannot erase me." Their silence was the final proof of defeat, and in that moment, I knew the battle was won. In the weeks that followed, David and Karen vanished from the town's chatter, their false story rotting where it had been planted. Neighbors stopped me on the street, not with pity, but with respect. "You fought back, Margaret," they said, "and you won." I returned to the porch each evening, coffee in hand, the boards beneath my feet still bearing the marks of my husband's hammer. The house stood, not just wood and brick, but a testament to endurance, to dignity, to the truth no one could steal. Ethan sat beside me, taller each day, a steady presence. "Grandpa would be proud," he said one evening. I believed him. The house was safe. My place in it was safe, and so was I. If you've listened this far, thank you. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Stories Women 65 Plus USA, because stories like mine deserve to be heard.